Hello, my friends. Welcome to Quick Tricks Record of the Day. My name is Ellsworth, otherwise known as Nailbat.
Yes,
Today we're going to talk about Yes Men by Kosheen, and it's the Decoder remix. And I love Decoder, as you might know. Done some pretty amen heavy stuff, some techie stuff recently. Figure let's check out some funky boom bat stuff. There it is. Pretty sure I've talked about Decoder with anyone that will listen when it comes to drum and bass people, so probably not too surprising to hear that I love Decoder. You may have heard it a million times. But one thing I love about him is that he's got a couple of different styles to really kind of emblematize what he does, you know? And this is a style that I think I've kind of ignored a little bit when I've spoken about him in the past. Not so much the style, but in a different approach to the aesthetic that I like about him so much. I've often talked about how Decoder is really a master, or was a master, still is I'm sure, of like dark funk, and you can hear that here. But something I kind of leave out a lot when I speak about him is his instrumentation. His stuff does have a little more of a musical ear to it than some of the drum and bass that was coming around this time, and that's heavily, I'm sure, to do with his changeover from being just a preacher DJ and going over to Kosheen, which we'll talk about in a minute. So, Decoder was around for a while before Kosheen became a thing. Did a lot of songs with his buddy Substance. And in the late 90s, they merged up with, let me get this right here. They merged up with Sian Evans, singer from the UK. And they formed Kosheen. And hopefully you've heard of Kosheen. If not, you're missing out. Kosheen was huge, man. Obviously, if you've heard of them, you probably heard their biggest tune, which was I think was their first single, "Hide You." Maybe "Suicide" was their first single, but it was all off that first album, Resistance. And man, it was just a breath of fresh air. It was like a drum and bass band. I mean, it wasn't always D&B, but you could hear all the bones of it. You could hear the influence from the drum and bass side from Substance and Decoder there. And her voice was just pristine, man. You know, really one of the last voices of that 90s electronic feel that, you know, the girl from Sneaker Pimps had. And it was a style that I fell in love with. It was hard to pin down, obviously, what made those vocals in that time so appealing to me and so many other people. This actually just came in yesterday. Just got this. I had some records show up in the driveway, just 3 of them, all from good labels. So the first one that came through, Hard Leaders, and then Higher Education. Finally, this one on Breakbeat Culture. 3 labels you could pretty much buy from on site, if you ask me. And we'll get into all those records at some point. This is one of those tunes I had to pick up. I don't know where I first heard it, but I know it rung a bell, man. You know, when I was floating around through Discogs and looking up Decoder tunes, as I do. And this popped up. It was like, oh, and I listened to it, and I was like, man, I remember this. God knows from where. Probably a Diesel Boy set. I think he was probably my biggest introduction to Decoder. Him and Dara were probably my biggest introductions to Decoder. But I think I heard more Diesel Boy back then, just because there was so many live recordings of him from all over this country that you could find on all those horrific file sharing sites back in the day, like Kazaa and BearShare and Napster, all that kind of stuff that's evolved or long gone. But awesome, funky little tune. He's got a couple of those, and especially when he works with Substance. There's a different album that either the album was called BS9 or the head single was called BS9, but it had a very similar feel to this, probably from the same time frame. I don't have it anymore. It belonged to my buddy Symmetrix, and he took it with him when he moved. But the feel of it is still there. They're all boom bat tunes. They're all very funky, not deviating from their overall aesthetic too much, just kind of chunking along and really good moody little steppers. You know what I mean? They're not heavy. They can get a little heavy, but most of them are kind of like this, where it's just very much an established groove that's slightly evolving. The hi-hat pattern might change, the hi-hat sample might change. You know, thin little breakdowns, maybe a very muted hip-hop percussion behind the drum and bass percussion if you listen carefully enough. But overall, they're not going to surprise you too much. They're very much just good dance floor tunes, you know, good 10:30 at night tunes. Or later, whatever. But either way, Decoder's the man. We're going to talk about him a bunch more. There's a ton that I want to get through with him. One of the best producers, in my opinion. And I think maybe a little bit of scarcity value comes through in my personal taste, because he doesn't put out that much stuff anymore. So I think I value him even more, which probably is telltale for some of my weak points in my personality. But we don't have to get into that. This isn't about me. This is about records. So that will do it for today, friendos. I hope you dig it. I got lots more stuff to talk about. I have a lot of good records that I acquired recently that I'd love to share with you. A couple more coming, hopefully before my birthday this coming Sunday. So, I hope you like what I have to share. I hope you're all doing well. I think we're going to do a trance track tomorrow or the next day. A lot of drum and bass recently, because that's kind of my bread and butter. But you can't have bread and butter every day, can you? Peace.